I live in Burke County, North Carolina, in Morganton, a place where people don't lock their doors until they go to sleep, and the roads wind through dense forested hills like something out of a postcard. I'm used to the quiet lifestyle that comes with living rural. You get some weird characters here and there, but it's usually nothing too bad. My husband and I own a nice little plot of land tucked away from the main roads. My work schedule fluctuates, days and nights. That night I was coming home after a long, exhausting shift, sometime around 3 a.m. The hospital was short-staffed and I'd picked up an extra hour. I remember thinking, just get food, go home, crash. My phone was at 4% and I was starving. I stopped at a gas station on the edge of town. There was barely anyone there, just the tired clerk behind the counter and a man loitering in one of the snack aisles. I didn't think much of it at first. The guy never bought anything, just kept glancing my way, not smiling. There was something off about his posture, too casual, like he was waiting, not shopping. I got $10 worth of gas and grabbed a wrap sandwich from the mini cafe. I sat at one of the cracked plastic booths inside to eat. The guy eventually walked out, still empty-handed. As he passed, he gave me one last look, not curious or bored, but like he was taking mental notes. I should have trusted my instincts then. After eating, I went outside and topped off my tank. The smell of gas hit me hard, stronger than usual. I figured the pumps were leaking a bit, or maybe my hands got dirty. I wiped them on my scrubs and got into my car. The roads around there are pitch black at night, twisting through woods with no streetlights. I was driving slow, my eyes heavy with sleep, when something weird happened. The gas gauge needle dropped to E. Not gradually. It just fell like it was broken. The low fuel light came on and beeped. I sat up, confused. I'd just filled it, hadn't I? I pulled over and restarted the engine. Still empty. Still beeping. I tried to keep going, thinking maybe it was a glitch. But not 2 minutes later, the engine died. My hands started shaking. This part of the road didn't even have a shoulder, just dirt and trees. I had no idea what was wrong. I'd never run out of gas before. I called my husband immediately. Luckily, he picked up after a couple rings, groggy but alert when he heard my voice. He said it sounded like a fuel leak. I opened the car door and immediately smelled gas again. Stronger now, like it was under the car. He said, "That's not right. Stay put. I'm leaving now. I'll call roadside too." As I stood outside, trying not to freak out, I heard something. A car behind me, slowly approaching with no headlights on. My stomach dropped. It wasn't just the silence that made it scary. It was the fact that they chose not to have their lights on at 3 a.m. I whispered to my husband, "There was a guy at the gas station who gave me weird vibes." "You don't think he followed me, do you?" My husband didn't answer right away. Then his voice dropped. "He might have cut your fuel line." I'd never even heard of that being a real thing, but I didn't need a diagram. I knew I needed to move. I yanked the keys from the ignition and locked the doors, turning off the headlights automatically. Then I ran, straight off the road and into the woods, ducking low. I didn't even think to look back. My heart was pounding out of my chest. My phone battery hit 2%. I told my husband to text me when he was close. Then I sprinted through the tree line toward the first house I could find. The porch was dark. So was every window. But I rang the bell anyway. 3 quick presses. Like some part of me knew this wasn't a night to be polite. A light flicked on inside. A man in his 60s opened the door, clearly just woken up. I was in my scrubs, breathless, sweaty, scared. I explained everything fast, asked if I could come in just to charge my phone and hide. He looked me over for a second longer than I liked, but then stepped aside. Sure, come in." I asked for an iPhone charger. He nodded and said he'd look for one. Then he motioned for me to sit in the living room. The place was old. Wood-paneled walls, outdated furniture. The only light came from a lamp in the corner. He called from the kitchen. "Want some water?" "Yes, please," I said, suddenly parched. That's when I saw it. There was a mirror hanging above the mantel. From my angle, I could see part of the kitchen reflected in it. He filled the glass. And then I swear, I saw him drop something into it. A flick of his fingers, too quick to be innocent. The faucet kept running long after he moved out of sight. He came back and handed me the glass, then sat across from me with a weird smile. "So? What happened again?" "I just really need to charge my phone," I said, not answering. He nodded, stood, and went upstairs. I took the moment to lift the glass of water to my nose. Nothing. But I knew he did something to it. My phone was now on 1%. I sent my husband a dropped pin. Seconds later, it died. I sat for a second, debating if I should run again. But the minute I heard his footsteps on the stairs and his voice saying, "I don't have an iPhone, just Android," I was already halfway to the door. "I need to go," I said quickly. "Thanks." I walked fast down the driveway, then broke into a run as soon as I was out of sight of the house. I crouched low behind a row of trees beside the road. My legs were trembling. I was shaking not just from fear, but disbelief. 2 near escapes in one night? What were the odds? I waited until I saw headlights. I stepped out cautiously. Thank God. It was my husband's truck. I climbed in and finally broke down, sobbing. He drove us back to my car. The strange car that had followed me was gone. But the back window of my car, shattered. Someone had broken in. Nothing was taken, but the car was clearly vandalized. The battery had died too. My husband was furious when I told him about the man in the house. He wanted to go back and confront him, but I begged him not to. "We'll let the cops and the tow truck handle it." Hours later, we got the car towed. The dealership confirmed it the next day. The fuel line had been deliberately cut. Someone wanted me to stop on that road. Thankfully, I had a few days off work to recover. But even now, years later, I still think about that night. I still wonder what would have happened if I drank that water. Or if I hadn't seen that man in the mirror. Or if my husband hadn't answered the phone. 2 strange men. 1 terrifying night. One thing I learned. I'll never again dismiss a bad feeling. Because sometimes your gut is the only sign you'll get. When I was 18, I was very immature and naive. I was kind of a jerk when I was on the road, honking whenever I got impatient, borderline cutting people off. Looking back now, it was very stupid, and if I ever have kids, I'll be that much more strict with them as far as their driving goes. That being said, I did drive a lot for someone my age. I went away to school 5 hours away from home. No matter what day of the week, traffic always got atrocious the closer I got to home. So during breaks, I'd drive home at night to avoid it. That would cut the drive down from 4 to 5 hours to just 3. It was the beginning of winter break. The fall semester had just ended. All my friends left for home on the same day, but I waited until later that night to head out. There's nothing I hate more than traffic. I used to drive a Mazda 3 that I would beat the ever-living crap out of. And admittedly, I had a bad habit of driving with the gas tank nearly empty. People would always comment on it whenever they rode with me, and I'd just assure them that the car still had at least 30 miles left, even after the needle hit E. Well, I found out the night I was driving home from school that I was wrong. I was only like an hour into my drive on the interstate. The gas needle was sitting on E, and I was pushing my luck, waiting for a gas station sign instead of looking one up on my map. The car started making these weird sounds and jolting. That's when I realized I may have actually run the tank dry. I got off the first exit ramp I saw and just hoped it would lead to a gas station. The exit was pitch black. No streetlights, just woods on either side. I was scared to slow down and lose momentum because I didn't know if I'd have enough gas left to even reach a station. I blew right through the stop sign at the end of the ramp and made a sharp left onto the intersecting road. Another dark road surrounded by trees. I was screwed. The car eventually came to a stop. The engine died. Things only got worse when I took out my phone and saw no bars. I have T-Mobile, which is the worst reception you can have anywhere far from a major city. I tried calling 911 because I was stupid and thought maybe it would still go through without reception. Of course it didn't. I was terrified. I didn't know what to do. I turned on my hazard lights and just waited for someone to pass by. It was a long time before I saw headlights. When I finally did, I flashed my brights at the car as it approached. It passed me at first, but then made a U-turn and pulled up onto the grass behind me. I didn't know who was getting out of that car, and I was just an 18-year-old defenseless girl. I cracked the window down just a little bit as the man approached. I ran out of gas, I told him. Can you help me? He offered to give me a ride to the nearest gas station. He was bald, wore glasses, and honestly, kind of looked trustworthy. I didn't have many other options, so I agreed. I got out of my car, locked the doors, and followed him to his black Honda, probably a 2010 model. The second I got in, I noticed the smell. It was funky, not rotten, just off. I couldn't place it. He banged another U-turn and drove back the way he'd come. He made small talk, asking where I was from and basic stuff. I was honest with him, told him I was driving home from school. He said he lived in the area and that they didn't get too many out-of-towners getting off the interstate in this quiet little town. The route we were taking had no buildings, just woods, everywhere. I asked if he knew of any gas stations, and he said, yeah, just a ways up the road. Then I started hearing something, bumping, thumping, coming from the back of the vehicle. It sounded like the trunk. At first I figured it was just the road or maybe something loose back there, but the sound kept coming, and the guy, he wouldn't stop talking. Finally, we reached a town-looking area. There were some lights, a diner, a few small houses, civilization at last. There was a red light at the first intersection. We came to a stop, and for the first time, there was silence. That's when I heard it, a muffled, unmistakable scream coming from the trunk, followed by violent thumps and bangs. I turned and looked at the man. He looked back at me. In a split second, I unbuckled my seatbelt, flung the door open, and jumped out of the car. At the same time, he reached across and tried to grab me, to pull me back in. I heard him get out too, but instead of chasing me, he ran to close the passenger side door. Then I heard the engine roar as he floored it down the street. I sprinted to the diner and burst through the doors, yelling for help. I made a scene, but I didn't care. I used their landline to call 911. It became a whole huge thing. Multiple officers showed up to take my statement. Given the seriousness of what I reported, that I heard someone screaming from the trunk, they had to get every last detail from me. His car, his appearance, where he picked me up. They even drove me back to my car to include the pickup spot in the report. They also helped me get in touch with AAA, who eventually came out to fill up my tank. That was, without a doubt, the scariest experience of my life. I was shaken to the core the entire ride home. I hope they found that man, and I pray that whoever was in that trunk is still alive today. Because for all I know, that man could have been taking me to his house or somewhere worse. And I was just lucky enough to get out at that red light. This happened way back in 2005. I was 18. I was living in Uvalde, Texas, a very low-income neighborhood, the kind you'll find sprawled out all over rural Texas when you're not right outside a city. The closest city to me was San Antonio. I was going to some local community college because that's all my parents could afford for me. One of my best friends from high school, Andrew, moved to San Antonio to go to San Antonio College. He was living in a small apartment a little outside of the city with a roommate. His girlfriend would also often stay with him. Since the city's only really an hour and a half away, I'd visit him all the time. He invited me one weekend to come crash for the night, so I took my trusty old 1995 Toyota pickup truck. Just kidding. The thing was a piece of crap. The gas gauge didn't even work on it. I'd always have to keep track of the last time I filled the tank, then reset the trip mileage. I took Route 90, which was a straight shot from Uvalde to San Antonio. I was on the road at like 3 p.m. on a Friday. There was no traffic at all. I got to Andrew's at a reasonable time. His girlfriend wouldn't be getting there until tomorrow, so tonight we were going to go out. We stopped at a liquor store and drank in his apartment for a while with his roommate. Then the three of us went to this dive bar that would kind of look the other way with fake IDs. That was basically our night. We got back to their apartment around 2 a.m. after getting food. I slept on the couch. The next day would have almost been the same thing, but Andrew and his girlfriend were having issues all day. As the two of them got drunker as the night went on, she started yelling at him in front of me. It got really awkward and uncomfortable. I didn't really have much to drink that day because I was already iffy about staying the night with her there. Eventually, I decided I'd just head back home. I said goodbye to everyone and started my journey home. It was very late at night. I want to guess midnight, maybe a little earlier. Route 90 was deserted at this time, so I was flying. Well, flying by my pickup standards. But suddenly the engine started sputtering. I felt my heart completely drop. I forgot to fill up the tank. I slowed down, but it was too late. The engine cut. I pulled to the side of the road and tried starting it a few times. Nothing. I took out my cell phone, just as shitty as my truck, and tried to get a signal. No shot. I couldn't even call for help. I had to just put my hazards on and hope a good Samaritan would pass. You wouldn't believe how long I sat on the side of the road before seeing headlights. I waved my arms as the car approached, but it zoomed past me, ignored me. This happened again after another 10 minutes or so. I was starting to feel hopeless. Like maybe I should just sleep in my car and wait until sunrise to get help. So that's what I was going to do. I got inside my car, took the key out of the ignition to cut the battery, and just angled my seat back to sleep. I'd hear the occasional car zoom past, maybe once every 10 minutes. But it didn't feel worth waving people down in the dark. It seemed sketchy for myself, and to the people in the cars. But just as I was starting to actually drift away to sleep, a car door closing behind me woke me up. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw a car pulled up behind me. Its headlights were off. I turned around now to get a better look. It was a big pickup truck, but I couldn't see anyone inside it. Nor did I see anyone outside. Maybe someone pulled over to help. I got out of the car and said, "Excuse me?" No response. I walked closer to the truck just to confirm no one was inside. Then I walked back to my car. This was weird. I looked toward the trees on the side of the road. Maybe someone was pissing in the woods? I went back inside my car and locked the door. This was just too weird. Suddenly, there was a tap at my window. I jumped. I looked to see a man looking down at me, into the car, smiling. He didn't do anything yet. He just said, "Hey, buddy, need a hand?" I lowered the window a crack and said, "Hey, I ran out of gas." He said, "That's quite the predicament. Step out and give me a hand with this real quick." When he said that, I thought he meant help him with a gas jug to fill up my tank or something. So I stepped out of the truck and shut the door, expecting him to lead me to his truck. But he stood there, looked down at me. He was much taller, still smiling, and said, "I need you to empty your pockets, please." It took me a second to process what he meant. I was literally a broke college student driving a piece of junk pickup truck. I wasn't about to get robbed of the only cash I had. And my phone, I ran for it, straight into the trees. I'm small but fast. I turned around. He was chasing after me. Once I made it into the woods, I zigzagged all over the place until I seemed to lose him. Then I crouched behind a big tree to catch my breath. That's when I heard him approaching again. I quieted my breath. Then I heard him say out loud, "I'll kill you, you piece of..." I don't know if he was saying it out of anger, or if he wanted me to hear it, but I was too scared to move. Even after I heard his footsteps move away, I didn't move. In fact, I stayed in that position the rest of the night, eventually laying behind this big tree until dawn. I went back over to the highway. My truck was still there, but the truck behind me was gone. Both of my truck's doors were open. My glove box had been gone through, emptied of anything even somewhat valuable. My flannel hoodie was also taken, which had something in the pocket, I'm sure. Eventually, I managed to wave down a good Samaritan. He gave me a ride to the closest gas station. I bought a fuel can, filled it with gas, and the man brought me back to my car. I filled the tank just enough to drive the truck to a gas station to fill up completely. Then I went straight home. This was a real-life learning experience for me. There are bad people out there who will try to take advantage of you when you're in a vulnerable spot. But there are also good people, like the man who helped me.